Super-organisms, a title that probably caught your ear and eye with its mysticism. What it means will surely leave you seeing living things a little differently, and it may even have you considering what an individual really is. G'day everyone, my name's Andrew and this is Andrew's Lens, and today I'm going to be explaining what the phenomenon of a superorganism is. I'm going to go through a few cases, including a few special ones, which you're definitely going to want to hear, and hopefully I'm going to stretch your perception of what an individual really is. But firstly, let's talk about the word superorganism. Super means anything above or beyond, and organism means anything that is alive. So what can be above or beyond a regular organism? What is this higher state of consciousness? Well, a superorganism is like a collection of individual organisms of the same species coming together to form what is essentially a larger, more complicated, and almost transcendent organism. Now let's talk about the word organism for a second. The base word is organ, which, as we all know, are parts of the body that perform different functions to keep the body alive. So in essence, an organism is a collection of parts that work together to form a whole which can survive and maintain homeostasis. Before we proceed, let's nail down what this word actually means, because it is super important to what we're talking about today. So to explain what homeostasis is, I'm going to be drawing a few things down for you, just so we can get a better picture, because it's easier to describe visually. Let's draw a little graph in here. Very simple XY axis. On the x-axis, we're going to put down time, and on the y-axis, we're going to put down, let's go with temperature. That's just our first example. Temp. Don't need any units here, it's more just about the idea. So for temperature, this is the livable zone right here. And up here is danger. And down here is also danger. If we get too hot or too cold, we're going to be in danger. This green zone in the middle is the safe zone. Let's just call that safe zone. So, as you probably know, our body temperature fluctuates throughout the day. So let's just say it goes like this. And so these fluctuations are perfectly normal, and every single metric in the body, we're talking body temperature, glucose levels, solute levels in the blood, almost everything in the body follows this pattern here. And that's completely normal. We have fluctuations throughout the day. Homeostasis is all of the mechanisms and the act of maintaining these metrics in this zone here. So maintenance of homeostasis is holding everything in that green zone. So as you know, if our temperature gets too high or too low, we'll die from hyperthermia or hypothermia. But homeostasis is making sure that our temperature stays in that zone where we can safely live. And that could include things like shivering. It can include things like the sensation of feeling cold so that your brain goes, oh, I should put some more clothes on. It could be sweating to remove heat, anything like that. Those are homeostatic mechanisms to keep your body in that stable range. Okay, so now we know what homeostasis is, let's talk a bit more about superorganisms and other organisms. Okay, so an organism is a collection of parts, such as organs or cells or anything like that maintain homeostasis, and therefore life. And what the concept of a superorganism proposes is that a group of living things, living organisms, can act as a whole to maintain homeostasis and survival of the entire group. So it could essentially be seen as an organism. Many living things working together and collecting to form what could be considered like a transcendental organism. Okay, I think I've laboured this point enough. Let's look at some real life examples of these things. Okay, so firstly, let's talk about bees and ants, as they're the most common examples. Let's start with bees. Colonies of bees exhibit so many different traits that make them almost seem like a larger organism when they are moving as a colony. And I'm just going to list some of those traits now. Let's start off really easy with just communication. Bees often communicate with chemicals, little chemical signals that go to other bees and tell them a message, basically. And humans and larger animals have a very similar process, where there's hormones that go through the body that tell certain cells and certain organs to perform certain functions. I also just briefly want to flag something that I'm calling radical homeostatic maintenance, which isn't quite like the other things on this list, but I just want to mention it really quickly. So that's things like building shelter and finding food. Really basic, large-scale things that benefit the whole colony that individuals couldn't live without. And it's less so about maintaining temperature or communication or anything like that, but it's more about these fundamental facts that this colony needs to survive. So I'm going to include that one as well. Radical homeostatic maintenance. Bees will often maintain temperature of the hive, usually to around 33 to 36 degrees, all just by their collective action. Almost as if the hive or swarm is a larger organism maintaining its internal body temperature, like organs and cells do in larger organisms. Speaking of organs, as many of us know, perhaps from the Bee movie, have different jobs, like the queen bee, the worker bees, drone bees, scout bees, etc. Sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? Almost as if different sections of a larger organism performing certain functions for the sake of the hive. Perhaps organs? Organisms? Perhaps this is a larger organism. Defense against predators. And this was actually the inspiration for this whole video. I was in my sister's car and we were driving somewhere and this bee landed on the windscreen, almost like in the Bee movie itself. And the bee tried to start stinging the windscreen. This prompted the question from me, why are bees so dumb? Why are they trying to sting a car when they know it's going to kill them anyway? This prompted the realization in me that the bee was only a part, perhaps, of a larger organism. They will die, but the larger organism may survive because this tiny little component of the colony, this little bee, sacrificed itself and contributed to deterrence, which in turn contribute to the survival of the colony. Another thing that bee colonies have, which is sort of like larger organisms, is immunity. They can have fever responses. So like I said, they can regulate the temperature of the hive earlier. They can also induce fevers if there's fungi or bacteria in there that they don't want. Specialist bees remove disease larvae, almost like the immune system removes dead cells. If a larger predator gets in, such as a hornet, the bees will surround it, forming what is called a bee ball, where all these bees just surround it and vibrate their muscles so that the temperature is raised and they effectively burn the intruder alive. And if you think about it, this isn't too dissimilar to what the human immune system does to parasites. Our immune cells surround the parasite and essentially just burn it alive, but with oxidative stress instead. One more thing is collective intelligence. They'll communicate and make decisions that no single bee could make by itself, such as dancing in particular patterns and rhythms if they find lots of bountiful flowers or a good place to nest. And the bee can't make this decision by itself, but if lots of bees are putting in their input, almost like neurons in a brain, then they can make an educated decision. Okay, so bees are awesome. Now let's talk about ants, which are almost like bees on crack in this regard. So ants do most of the things that bees do to qualify them as potential superorganisms, with a few interesting additions as well. They essentially form living architecture. That includes bridges, where they kind of chomp their pincers and legs together. You may have seen photos of this before. They can also form rafts when there's a flood to keep their queen bee alive. Similar to bees with the collective intelligence, they use something called quorum sensing, which bees also use, and it's a whole other topic in itself, but essentially, no one ant knows where the best place for a nest is, but as a collective, they can make an educated decision on this matter. It's similar to wisdom of the crowd, where you can get the average of the estimations of a large number of people, and the average is usually quite close to the real answer, even though individual estimations are often quite far off. Another analogy for this is neurons in the brain, where one neuron by itself can't do anything, it's functionally useless, but the beauty of our brains is the fact that they connect to each other and they communicate, and there's so many of them, they're all communicating, and they can make educated, well-formed decisions together. So it's almost as if every ant is an individual neuron in the brain that is the colony, in the colony mind. This is also seen in ants' amazing ability to optimize the shortest paths using an algorithm involving many ants. And even when an obstruction presents, it only takes them a few minutes to re-find the shortest path from A to B. Ants also have a form of circulatory and storage systems, just like we have circulatory system as an organ and our fat as an organ. And these systems are made up of ants. They have secondary stomachs, which is kind of hard to believe given how small they are. It is essentially used to regurgitate food when they get back to the nest, creating a network of nutrition just like the blood of a larger animal. There's also specialized ants called honeypot plants, which are essentially living pantries, just like fat. They get fed more and more and more until they swell to a really large size, and then they hang from the roof to provide food during periods where there is less food around. And this is exactly what our fat does. And fat is considered an organ. These honeypot ants are an organ, and an organism is made up of organs. Okay, so bees and ants are awesome in this way, but I have one more special case before I get to a really special and unique case that I want to discuss with you. So next, I want to talk about the Portuguese man-o'-war, also known as the blue bottle where I'm from. You've probably seen these guys around before, and you might have even been stung by them before. These jellyfish really ride the line between individual and a colony, and they really do bring into question what an individual is. This guy might look like a single jellyfish, but it's actually a colony of smaller animals called zooids, making up a colonial animal or a superorganism. This is called a siphonophore, of which there are nearly 200 species, and coral are sort of similar. The man-o'-war is definitely the most commonly known one though. So the tiny animals that make up this jellyfish looking thing are genetically identical, but they have specialized functions, just like organs in the body. Organ, organism. Here is an image summarizing the different functions that the different types of animal in this colony perform, such as reproduction, making the balloon float thing, defense or attack, i.e. the stingers, and digestion, etc. These animals are insanely interesting, and it's taking a lot of self-discipline to not say everything about these things. But if you would be interested in that, comment down below if you want a full video about them. So, the crux of all this is, in this superorganism, where is the line between individual and colony? Are the small animals, the zooids, their own animals, or are they just little cells? Technically, they are their own little animals, but are they really? And the superstructure, the man-o'-war itself, is that not, for all intents and purposes, its own animal? I mean, there's a reason it gets confused with jellyfish all the time, because on the surface level and the way it acts, it might as well be a larger organism. But technically, it's just a colony of smaller animals. And so this is where I ask you, yes you, what is an individual? Suddenly, the question has become a lot harder to answer. And I would like to propose that the word individual is just a vague term to describe units of life. And now I want to discuss that special case I was talking about earlier. Can human populations be considered superorganisms? It's a stretch, but ants and bees have democratic decision making. They have different jobs, they store food, they have immune systems, just like we have police. They have collective intelligence and circulatory systems where things are shared, and they communicate with one another. Sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? How about roads like blood vessels, governments like brains, farms and factories like stomachs and intestines, cities like hives or nests, and sewage systems like, well, you know what. But of course, we humans are individuals, that is a fact. So again, I ask you, where do you draw the line between individual and colony and superorganism? What is an individual? If you want to go one step further, look into the Gaia hypothesis. It essentially explores the idea that every single organism on Earth contributes to one supermassive organism that sort of regulates all the conditions on Earth. It's a really interesting postulation, but one that's very heavily debated, and I'd love to get into it today, but it is a very big topic, so maybe a video in the future. But for now, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. My name's Andrew, and this is Andrew's Lens. And if you're still watching, you clearly enjoyed the video somewhat, so if you could like or subscribe or comment, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. I put a lot of effort into this video, so I would really appreciate you hitting any of the buttons down there. Except for the dislike button. Don't hit that one, please. Okay, well, that's it from me. Keep enjoying life, and I'll see you next time. You like jazz?